you can help people, but you can be very choiceful about who you help, and you can help people who are helping to change some of the systemic problems that are contributing to this. And it wasn't just about chopping down trees, it was more just the system that we're in. And that I literally stayed awake all night that night. I could not sleep. It was like, I was so buzzing. It was just like this download from somewhere. I was just like, you need to do this.
Hello, welcome back to the podcast. Nathaniel Dunn on the show today. We dive deep into his story. We touch upon his training with NLP and how it allowed him to get more of a grasp on his well-being and to understand himself mentally a bit more. And his Menswork exploits his Isle of Man stuff, which he's really passionate about, and lots more. I hope you enjoy. Thanks for tuning in. And if you want to find out about my men's group, it's called the Being Human Community. You can head over to one of the links in the description to find out more. There's online offerings and also local offerings if you are in the northeast of England. Or just reach out if you want to chat, interact us in the comments section, and I will speak to you soon. Enjoy the podcast. But welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Good to connect with you, man. It feels like we've got very similar things going on, similar times in our lives, and it's good to know more people in the world of men's work and just health in general, and kind of feeding into the same missions, I guess, and the same things that we see, the same obstacles that we, I guess, align on, in terms of what isn't serving our humans, and what that narrative is of what makes us human, I guess, is kind of the biggest things that we connected on. But after the 100 human experience, we can talk about that as well. There's no real parameters of this conversation. We can go wherever. So there's no real agenda, which is how I like it. Nice. But I thought, first of all, we'll obviously start with a good old introduction of yourself, and perhaps a bit about your journey and what led you into this work.
Thank you for having me. Really cool to connect. That was a great experience, the 100 human experience. It was really nice to meet some more like-minded folks. My name's Nathaniel. I'm a change maker, so I'm really interested in change, and change at multiple levels. Change on an individual level, on a sort of internal level, and that's what I've been focused on for quite a few years. But in the last probably 2 years, I'm really starting to focus on impacting change on a bigger level, on a more systemic level. I think the trajectory of humanity is not very good at the moment, and I love helping people, but I love helping people who themselves are trying to create a big impact in the world and trying to change things, and so that's kind of my sweet spot now. So really focused on helping people who themselves have a high purpose, and trying to create a better world. What that looks like, I'm working with some entrepreneurs in the sustainability space, working with some people who are working on in kind of what you might call mental health or social change as well, involved with a few startups, and do a bit of work with a social enterprise as well, so doing some trauma work, stuff with military veterans, police, fire brigade, helping people who are really struggling quite a lot, and doing the men's work too. And I kind of find myself here by accident, really. It wasn't really an intention. I used to struggle with anxiety for years and years and years, and anything involving groups of people used to freak me out, or anything where there was any kind of performance, where I felt like I needed to perform, like the whole idea of this, which is just you and me chatting, but it's still for me, this kind of thing, public speaking, all that kind of stuff, used to really, really freak me out. And I'd always been like that. So I never really thought too much about it. It was just me. And at some point, sort of in my 20s, it started to become a real challenge, because I was in the corporate world. I was working in a big company. I was surrounded by people all the time, working in this big open plan office, and I was just always on edge, never felt comfortable in that environment. And it was just exhausting me. And I'd have to kind of psych myself up just to go to work, and I'd get home and I'd just be exhausted. And I was working for a big research agency, and a huge part of that job was looking after clients, because even though I struggled with groups, I was always good with people. And a big part of my job was going into clients' offices to either get the research brief or deliver the research, which is basically being in a meeting, running meetings, or doing like proper stand-up formal presentations. So I was just constantly in this environment that I found emotionally just super draining. And I feel like I got away with it for a long time. Sort of, I had a couple of blips, but like nothing major really. And then about 8 years in, I just had what felt like a total meltdown in a work meeting, where it's like my body didn't respond to what my brain was telling it. That's what it felt like. And I was trying to, it's my meeting, so everyone's kind of looking at me, waiting for me to talk, and I just, nothing was coming out, and I couldn't speak, and I completely froze, which was, I felt like I was paralyzed, and I didn't know what that was. I'd never had that happen to me before. And then I panicked, and then heart rate and shakes and sweats and all of that, and it was just this, I don't even know how long it was. It probably wasn't that long, but it felt like 3 months worth of pain in that moment. And it really freaked me out. It really, really freaked me out. I had no idea what it was. And I was so embarrassed, because it was in front of a bunch of people. And that prompted me to try and understand it and seek some help, basically, and try and figure out what it was so that I could stop it happening again. And I found myself, I did some NLP training. That was where it started for me, which really helped me. I was so lucky. I did a Google search. I was literally as lucky as that, and happened to stumble across one of the top NLP trainers in the world, who happened to live in Melbourne, where I was, and I had no idea about that at the time. And I went and trained with this guy, and he just felt like he just gave me the keys to my mind, and completely changed my life. And that was great, because it, my life got a lot easier, which was really all I wanted at that point. I stopped being so fearful all the time, and I started to actually enjoy doing the things that I hated and was terrified of. And but it was fascinating to me, because I was so curious about how that's even possible, and how it works, and how can you go from, I had a really profound shift. I'm talking like 2 days in a room with this guy, and I came out like a different person. Like, it really was utterly life-changing in a very short amount of time. It was, and that shocked me too, but in a good way. And I just became fascinated by how the mind works, and how we make sense of the world, and how the mind and the body work together, and just human psychology, basically, but not from a theoretical perspective, from a real hands-on perspective. And I kind of threw myself into understanding that, and did all kinds of trainings all over the place. And at some point, I realized I knew enough that I could help people. And I realized that there's a massive demand for that, because so many people are struggling in various ways. And roll forward a few years, and I've got a coaching practice, and I'm helping people all around the world now. And it's amazing. I feel very lucky. But it was an accident, really. I stumbled into it.
Mm-hmm. What do you think it was about the NLP specifically that shifted so much? Was it just like a framework to use in terms of understanding yourself? Because I've had a few guests on who have touched on NLP, but I don't really know that much about it myself. Does it really work with like somatics, and does it really hone in on that mind-body connection and the loop?
Yeah, Yeah. I'm a huge advocate for NLP.
Mm-hmm.
NLP's got a bad rap. It gets a bad rap because there's a lot.
Why do you think that is?
Rightly so, because there's a lot of crap NLP out there.
Yeah.
And it's, it's kind of like, I think of it. I mean, I'm big into martial arts. Studied kung fu for most of my life, for most of my adult life, anyway. Love it. And the way I think of that is, it kind of helped me to understand my own body and get coordinated and understand how I, get better control over myself, so that I could then have more control over someone else's body. That's kind of how I think about what kung fu gave me. But kung fu is really broad, right? There's a lot of bullshit kung fu out there. There's a lot of fake martial arts teachers. There's a lot of, you look on the internet for some of this stuff, it's ridiculous. And I kind of think of NLP in the same way. When I first really started to learn it, I felt like this is kung fu for my mind, which that's just how it made sense to me, because it's like I suddenly got some ways of understanding my own mind that then helped me to understand other people's minds and help me to therefore better interact and communicate and, be more functional and effective in the world, basically. But like with martial arts, there's so much crap out there, and there's a lot of just cookie cutter kind of, here's a script, learn this script, and that will help you to better work with people. And it's like, the world doesn't work like that. People don't respond like robots. What really, really good NLP training gives you is much more flexibility, mental flexibility. It gives you the ability to respond and adapt your behavior on the fly more effectively, and that's a godsend in any context, really. And a huge part of it is about your body. That absolutely. And what it gave me was, here's how I know how it works, right? This was the like a huge revelation for me. So I did the first weekend of this course. So this course is like I don't know what it is, 28-day course, I think, over 6 months. It's like a long weekend every month. And I did the first weekend. And after that weekend, I had what at that time was the biggest presentation of my life. I was in a new country. I was in Australia. I'd come in at quite a senior position in this company, and we were hosting a conference. We had, I don't know what it was, 100 clients in the room, maybe, all my team, all my new team. We had guest speakers from outside the organization, and I was one of the people who was representing the company. So it's a big deal for me. I hadn't been there very long, and it's kind of my reputation was on the line. And that would normally be the sort of thing that I would absolutely freak out about. And I still would have done it, but I would have done it from a place of fear. I would have been mega nervous. I'd have been worrying about it for months. And on the day, I'd have been borderline panic, and I'd have to force my way, mind over matter through it. And so I did this weekend, and I'm sat on the front row. So you got this, room full of people behind me, whatever it was, 100 odd people. And my boss was introducing me on the microphone. And so it was like the 20-second countdown to in a minute, you're literally in a few seconds, you're going to get up and you're going to talk to people, which is normally when I'd be just heart rate going and just wanting to find an escape route, and my mind's going, how can I get out of this without losing face? All of a sudden I've got, I ate something dodgy last night and I feel sick and I need to run. That kind of stuff was the kind of stuff that would go through my mind. Mm-hmm. And I felt the emotion. So I felt the sort of that response starting, and I was very aware of it. And I was aware of it with a much more open sort of acceptance of it, rather than fuck, I'm going to freak out. And I hope I'm allowed to swear on your podcast. Sorry. I'll keep a lid on that. And then I had some ways of some actual things that I could do mentally that just calm me down. And I did them in a matter of seconds. Just went dum 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 in my head, and it was some breathing stuff, and it's some stuff with my eyes, and some stuff with my tongue. It was all physical. It was using the body to slow down the nervous system, basically. And I just felt this wave of calm come over me. And I never felt that before like that. And I got up and I took the microphone and I turned around 100 people, and delivered this presentation and I nailed it and I really enjoyed it. And I sat down afterwards like, whoa, what was that? You know, that was like a completely new experience for me. And bear in mind, I'd probably done several hundred presentations in my life up until that point. I was, in a sense, a speaker as part of my job, you know, so I was very used to being very uncomfortable in front of a room full of people and doing it anyway. And for whatever reason, because I had these kind of tools that I could use, I just didn't have that experience. And that was one of the moments where I realized, wow, there's something here. This stuff works, you know. So that's what got me onto it.
Yeah. Where do you think the line goes between kind of being really self-aware and, I guess, questioning your own ability to do this, to deliver a speech? Because I think speaking publicly, whether it's at your birthday, giving a few words, or everyone can kind of relate to this. And I think it's a really interesting way in that getting to know ourselves better. Because I think there's a few elements there's a confidence thing, doing something that you'd not really experienced that. Like, but you say, you know, you had years and years, 8 years of doing this, but there was still something you couldn't surrender to or get past. And the physical stuff, understanding it first of all, but then putting in certain things as a practice just to calm down the nervous system. So it was almost like what you're saying is you were really dysregulated, and certain things, the speaking, the put on the spot, etc., would have dysregulated that and pushed that into a place where you weren't able to handle, because you didn't have the tools. So I guess my question here is, what would you say is the kind of percentages of like knowing yourself, being confident in something to speak about it? Because I feel that has to play a part, but then your nervous system and really attuning yourself to your own sense of self, I guess, your own sense of worth, you know, having like a grounded feeling within yourself that isn't dysregulated, has to play a part in that as well.
I don't know. I'm not sure I can put numbers on it, but I think I actually see the two things as quite distinct in that, like, I was confident in my ability just because I'd done it so many times and I knew what I was talking about, and I'd practice. You know, I was in the research world, so it was about information, so I'd know all the numbers and I'd run it by. I'd done practice presentations, you know, got people in my organization to put me on the spot and grill me and ask me all the questions they could think of. So I would always go in very well prepared. So it wasn't like a lack of confidence in that sense.
You could get through it.
Like I knew what I was talking about. But it wasn't that. And it was a very weird experience those few years, because I was a good speaker. You know, I was good at it, but it was just emotionally exhausting. It wasn't coming from a place of enjoyment or ease, or I never looked forward to it. I feared it. And afterwards I'd have a proper crash, and you know, I'd just have to go and sleep. Like, I was just it used up so much energy. So I'm not sure it was just a self-belief thing. It was almost like there was just the physical nature of it just felt completely alien to me. It was like I would just go into this mode where I couldn't think straight, basically, and would just be very self-conscious and, like, you know, very focused on my own trembling hands and stuff, and totally not connected to the audience or what I was trying to say, or, you know, just thinking in my head, you're going to forget what you're going to say, you're going to forget what you're going to say, you're going to forget what you're going to say. You know, you end up in these like weird little mental loops that were paralyzing. So I don't know how much of it's just self-belief or not. I mean, I know, like, it's so I still speak now, and obviously the format's different, and a lot of it's more virtual now, but and I still get nervous sometimes, but my understanding of that is different. It doesn't bother me anymore. It's like, oh yeah, there it is, and I know what it is, and I am at peace with it, and still feels a bit uncomfortable, but it's kind of like, it's okay, because I know that it doesn't actually mean anything. It's just my body getting ready to perform, basically. And that's actually not a bad thing. It's actually quite a good thing. You know, it's sort of part of the process.
Yeah, I always say if you're nervous about something, that means you care. So it's like the balance between that and then, I feel public speaking for me, it's like I try and kid myself into thinking I'm excited, but I know I am excited. Underneath it all, like there's so much excitement there.
Yeah.
But it's like just making sure that's your focus of, like, for me anyway, like how excited can I be about something? But of course there's nervousness, because, you know, there's a whole load of people that may laugh at you and ostracize you for doing something silly on stage, or everything's recorded these days. It's like there's no getting away with things. But it's an interesting one. I think, that's how it works for me anyway.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, isn't it? Like the actual experience of being nervous versus the experience of being excited. It's very similar.
Pretty similar, yeah.
You could even argue it's actually the same thing going on physically. It's just that you've got a different label for what it is. Now it's just the body kind of getting ready and sort of anticipation and a little bit of uncertainty and all of that. But one, we label that, well, that's a bad thing. Nervousness, you shouldn't be nervous. Why are you so nervous? You know, it's sort of, we think of it as a negative thing, and excitement's like a positive thing. It's like, getting ready for something. But actually, is it any different apart from the meaning physically? Don't know. I don't think there is much difference, really.
Yeah, physiologically it's exactly the same, right?
Yeah. And this was one of the things, again, this was like very early in my journey into this, but this was another moment that really helped me to see this or start to understand this, because, you know, one of the things that is in NLP training is state control, being able to elicit states, emotional states in yourself on tap. You know, go, right, I want to get into an excited state right now, and to be able to go there, or I want to get into a calm, confident state and be able to go there on demand. It's an incredible thing. And so, still while I was on this course, so it was quite early on in this course, I went and did this other presentation that was, it was a big pitch presentation. It was worth a lot of money to the company, like hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was an hour-long conversation. My boss was there. My boss's boss was there. I was doing most of the talking, and I'm presenting to, you know, some senior bods at the client, you know, like a contract renewal sort of conversation. So it was a big deal. And again, the sort of thing that I would normally get really nervous about. And I got to the client's office, and I had some techniques to calm myself and get myself into to elicit a good state, a useful state for that kind of thing. So I go into the toilets, lock myself in a cubicle, did this little like mental routine, which is some of which is what they teach at NASA to astronauts. Like if they need to get themselves into a headspace, like a little thing you can do with your eyes and stuff that kind of basically clears your head, gets you really present. And I went and did that.
Can you share what that is?
Yeah. Do you want to do it?
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it. So all you're going to do, so it's just using your eyes. And so what you want to do is look up. So look up with your eyes, down, and and come back to neutral. Don't
do this if you're driving.
Yeah, don't do this if you're driving. You can do it if you fly in a spacecraft, though, apparently. So you're using your eyes and you're using your voice. So you're going to do like this. I'll demonstrate it. So you're going to go. So you're going to say, for example, up, down. Watch me for a sec. I'll demo it. So up, down, left, right, up, down, left, right. And if you do that, try that a few times.
Mm-hmm.
So speak it first. Actually speak it, like do exactly what I just did. So say up,
speak it again.
and then go up.
Up, down.
So back to neutral, and
left.
then down.
It's like driving a car. Right.
Yes.
Up, down, left, right. Up, down, left, right.
That's it. It's harder than it looks, right?
It brings you into the moment.
It does. That's exactly what it does. It clears your head.
Yeah.
You can't. It's kind of like, you know, patting your head and rubbing your teeth. It's actually quite a hard thing to do coordination wise, and it just has you come out of your head. And there's loads of different things, games that you can do like that, but things that you do that use your body to sort of clear your head. Anyway, I did that. But you can feel the difference, right?
Have you heard of Philip Cox-Hind?
No.
He wrote a book called Mindfulness Change by Choice, developed like a interesting framework called Change by Choice. You would actually really like this guy. He came on my podcast. He reached out to me and got him on. He did a similar technique. I'm getting some flashbacks. I can't remember what it was. But yeah, he sent me his book, Change by Choice. So yeah, as you love change, I might send the book on to you.
Yeah, sounds good.
Yeah, he was a fascinating guy. He lived in Henley. But
let me tell you why this is relevant.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you're on a story. I've interrupted to get a dose.
Yeah, because it kind of links back to what we were talking about before, because about the whole, you know, the feeling of it and the meaning making of how you're feeling. Because I did that, and then I walked into that room for the first time ever in my life without any nerves in my body at all. Wow. And that was a revelation for me at that time. That was like a complete first, you know. And again, it's one of those moments where I'm like, holy shit, this NLP stuff works, you know. I'm walking in and I've got sales directors and marketing directors and like my boss, and I'm there and I'm like, I was totally cool. And I'd never, ever felt like that in that context before, which was great. And then I do my presentation, and I was aware that I was talking like this, and I was really flat and monotone, and I had no energy, and I knew it was happening, and I was, that's how it was coming out, and I was aware of it, and I'm like, this is weird. I need to come on, like, you know, get some energy into it, and I couldn't, and it was my delivery was really not very good, and I was disappointed with myself, and I came out of that really confused. And I remember going back to my teacher, my NLP teacher, a guy called James Sakalis, who's based in Melbourne. Highly recommend James, amazing guy. And I said to him, like, what the hell was that? You know, I did the stuff, I did the exercise, and it worked, and that was amazing. But then my actual performance wasn't very good. What's going on? And he said, well, what if those feelings, that nervousness or excitement, whatever you want to call it, what if that is part of your process to do a good presentation? And I was like, that for me at the time was like, whoa, hang on a minute. I thought I've been trying my whole life to escape from those feelings. And you're saying to me that those feelings might actually be making me good at what I'm trying to do, good at my job, basically. But it broke my brain at the time. I'm like, what? I'm so confused.
Give me it back. Give me the nervousness back.
Exactly, which I did, because I was still in that industry at that time. And I'm doing loads of presentations. So I started to experiment on myself, of like, you know, because you can, when you can start eliciting states in yourself, you can change by choice. You can dial it up or dial it down. And I would just practice, like, where's the level, you know, and I find now, like, if I don't feel nervous, that feels weird. I want a bit of nerves, because I know that that's going to have me be on and be up. Whereas if I'm completely flat and cool, then I know that I'm probably not going to perform as well. And actually what changed is the meaning that I had about that feeling. That feeling stopped being a thing to be worried about and embarrassed about and ashamed about and all the stuff that, you know, that we think about feeling nervous. Well, you shouldn't feel nervous. Come on, you've been doing this for years. Like, why are you still feeling nervous? You know, like it's a bad thing. I stopped labeling it as that and started labeling it as excitement and readiness and just being prepared. Feelings exactly the same, but how you think of it and therefore how you make sense of it and how you relate to it is totally different.
Yeah, but then you're able to revisit it and not be as, I guess, not present. Or would you say that you always were present with things? You just associated the nervousness with negativity, and like
you can be nervous and then still be present from there. Definitely. It's more beforehand. It's, you know, that like few minutes beforehand where you're not actually doing the thing yet. You're about to do the thing, and that's when all the discomfort is usually. And it's that moment where, are you spending 2 minutes going or are you spending 2 minutes going, all right, let's go? You know, it's such a different thing, and that is so much about the meaning that you're making of it.
Yeah. So let's sidestep slightly. I'm really interested to know a bit more about your health journey and how this kind of coincided with that, with, you know, just taking better care of yourself. When did that kind of feed into this? And when did things like that start making a bit more sense to you?
Do you mean the physical?
Yeah, physical. Yeah, obviously you were talking more kind of more mental, emotional kind of stuff. But yeah, the physical side of things, and just outside of the kind of the work arena, I guess. Was it? Were you on that path already, or when did you start kind of? Yeah, I guess living in more alignment with your health. Was it kind of on this path to realizing?
I think so. I mean, I think I was already on that path. I'd gone at the point where I'd started getting into the NLP and really starting to understand the mind. I'd moved to Australia by that point, and that was really good for me health-wise, because before that I was living in London and I was, you know, working really hard and partying really hard, which was great and I loved it, but I was definitely and training really hard as well. Like I was big into kung fu, I said, and boxing, so I was sort of like, it's quite an extreme lifestyle, I guess. It was just, you know, 40-50 hours of solid work every night. I was doing you know, pretty full on high intensity exercise kind of stuff, training, but then the weekend would just be totally obliterated with drink and drugs, and, you know, it was kind of, they were all working against each other, I think. And moving to Australia was definitely a really good thing for me, because I went, you know, I didn't know anyone there, and that was a good thing, and it slowed me down big time, and I you know, I really backed off on the drinking and the drugs and that, and that was physically, that was a really good thing. And then probably a year after that, after the first Christmas that I was there, I had some friends over for Christmas for a few weeks, and I had my sister over a couple of weeks after that. So I had guests for like 5 or 6 weeks over Christmas, and Christmas there is obviously like summer, hot. Because I was hosting, I kind of did a Northern Hemisphere Christmas, but in the summer. So I was doing all like roast dinners and wine and cheese and like all of this stuff, and it was like 40-degree heat, and it was just a really bad combination. And and we had like about 6 weeks of just, you know, living it up basically, and drinking too much and eating too much rich food and stuff, and the heat, and I got to the end of it, and my sister went home, and I was like, God, I just felt awful. Physically, I just felt awful, and I was like, wow, I need to do something. And then that February, for the first time ever, I did a month with no sugar and no alcohol, in any form, you know, no sugar, nothing sweet at all. As it's just in desperation, really, because I felt so bad, and I was shocked by what it did for me. I felt amazing. I felt incredible. I was sleeping well. I was waking. I'd never been a morning person, and I was literally like waking up in the morning, like morning, like ready to go. which was weird. And I just my energy levels were better, my mental clarity was better, and that was really interesting for me because I wasn't expecting that. And that got me really interested in trying to figure out my diet. It clicked that actually your diet has a huge impact on your day and on your health, which seems obvious now, but nearly 10 years ago to me, it wasn't to me. So that was a real interesting thing, which I'm still on that journey, to be honest. I'm still trying to figure out my diet. I mean, my level of knowledge has moved on a lot, but I still haven't quite found the perfect outcome, but or the perfect mix. But that was a real huge factor. And then I'm not sure when, it was probably about 2 years ago when I had I got the same information from multiple sources within a week, or about cold particularly, and followed after that about breathwork. And it came to me from one of my mates was doing Wim Hof and saying he was having these crazy experiences, and the functional medicine lady who was helping me with my diet, she was talking to me about cold immersion for the vagus nerve. And then one of my colleagues with the social enterprise work I do, so doing pretty serious trauma work, often with people who are really not okay when you're talking to them and they're panicking and you have to kind of calm them down. He'd started to use breath work, and so within a week I had 3 different people come to me and say, "Hey, you should really try this." And I was like, "Okay, that seems like there's a bit of a message coming from the universe there." And I started to experiment with breath work and cold showers at that point, just on myself. And I found it really helpful. And I think I've had a cold shower every day since. For like 2.5 years now, really.
Yeah.
And I found the breath work from a professional perspective. I found the breath work really, really helpful with people who are, quite often panicking. And so that sort of started to be part of my practice too. And I guess that was the thing that inspired me to go to the Be More Human, or the 100 Human experience, because I've been dabbling with it and reading about it and watching a few videos here and there, but I've never actually had anyone show me what to do. And yeah, I'm a big advocate of all of those things now, and they all form part of my sort of morning routine now. I feel better for it.
I want to touch upon your morning routine, but I think first, when did you come back from Australia, and what did that look like in terms of your transition from, I guess, the more corporate side of things? Was that into working for yourself and then developing the coaching practice and working with more one-on-one clients and companies?
Yeah, I got out of the corporate world a few years before I came back. So I left the corporate world about 6 years ago, just over 6 years ago. Basically, the moment I got my permanent residency and my visa status changed, so I could actually leave without having to leave the country, I left. And I left with 2 very young businesses at that point. One was an e-commerce business, startup business, and the other one was a sort of fledgling coaching practice. And I tried to do both. I tried to launch, despite having never run a business or started a business, I tried to start 2 businesses at the same time, which was just, in hindsight, ridiculous. But at the time, it made sense. And I was like, yeah, I reckon I can do this. And about a year after that, decided to pull back from the e-commerce and really focus on what I was really passionate about, which is change and helping people. And doubled down on the coaching at that point. And yeah, it was one-on-one work. I also run groups, and I'd started running groups by that point as well. And then 2.5 years ago, pretty much, that's when I came back from Australia. So I was already when doing what I'm doing now.
When did the kind of change stuff really, penny drop moment for you, or when did you start kind of feeding that in? When did it start making a lot more sense to you that it was change was the thing you wanted to focus on, kind of thing, and reframing that perhaps?
I think, the first real insight moment around that was I went to a conference, went to an NLP conference in Melbourne. It's maybe a year or maybe a year and a half after I'd started training. So I was still a newbie, you know, I was still a bit of a baby in that world. And I went to this conference, and it was a 3-day thing, and they had speakers from all over the world come in. Most of whom are based, you know, the UK is huge for that world, hypnosis and NLP and stuff. And they had a bunch of people come, and I just found myself in a room full of people helpers, you know, coaches, therapists, various different types of trainers. And I just never been in an environment like that before. And I just was looking around, there's maybe 300 people there or something. And I was just looking around going, wow, this is a whole industry that I just had no idea existed, you know, and they were nice people, you know, they were cool people. It was really interesting, everything that everyone was talking about. I was like, wow, you're up to some really cool stuff in the world. And that was and also the, you know, each one of the presenters would do a demonstration. And so they get someone up and they do some little exercise with someone or some change work process or whatever. And there were some people, like my teacher at that time had said or hinted at several times during the training that, like, you're getting the good stuff here, you know, like he told us very early on, there's a lot of pretty average NLP out there and you're getting some really good stuff. But like I had no reference for anything else. So I was like, yeah, you know, like that's what they all say, kind of thing.
Interesting.
And I'd heard that in the martial arts world, you know, like this is the real stuff, you know, like every teacher said that. So I didn't really think much of that. But then I'm in this conference and there were some people doing some demonstrations on stage who were running like international businesses. And I'm this newbie baby with, like, you know, 6 months training under my belt or whatever it was, a year's worth. And I was looking at it going, that based on what I've been taught, that doesn't look very good. Like I can see that that's not actually that effective. And that was a real kind of wake up call for me. Because I was like, hang on a minute. I think I do have some good skills here, you know, like I just hadn't really thought of it like that. And I think the combination of those two things just made me realize it was that moment, that was that weekend anyway, where I had the realization of like, I reckon there's something here for me, you know, and I didn't know what it was, but I kind of committed to myself that weekend that I'm gonna start working with people just to see if I like it. You know, it wasn't like I'm going to be a coach or anything like that. I wasn't sort of ready for that at that point, but I just went, yeah, you know what, this seems cool, seems helpful. I've got enough to at least start, and that was a big moment. And then I think with the sort of change on the broader scale, that really came up probably 2 years ago, and I'm on this program with another one of my teachers called Rich Litvin. This event that he runs called the Intensive, Rich Litvin Intensive, and he asked this question, which I've heard him ask many times before, but it really hit me. He said, what's a mission that's so big that nothing would stop you? And up until that, yeah, amazing question. Really, really, really powerful question if you're willing to slow down and sit with it. And up until, you know, not that long before that, up until sort of 2.5, 3 years ago, my mission had been get to a point where I could make a living out of this and become location independent, because I was in Australia and my dad wasn't very well and my little nephew was not very well, and I really wanted to be able to come back here where I am now, which is very rural. You know, there's no work here. I really wanted to be able to come back here to support them and do that, you know, running my own business and doing work that was making an impact. And that had been my mission for, you know, it took me a few years to get to that point. And when he asked that question, I realized, shit, like the mission that I've done, like that's true now. And all of a sudden I realized I haven't got a mission. Like I'm doing the work, but there's no bigger vision at that point. I just hadn't thought of it in that way. Yeah, I was like,
it's interesting. You chose a mission that was quite attainable in this time and in human history.
yeah,
And very achievable for you. But not, who's to say, but it was definitely achievable. Because my mission, I don't think I'll ever achieve it. Like, is that
your
shift?
mission?
I'll tell you at the end. So the mission, did that shift when you realized, oh, I've got what I needed? Oh, well, I've got what I kind of wanted out of life at this moment in time. Did that reframe? You have to revisit it.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. The creation of, to get to that point, it didn't feel easy or achievable for a long time. It felt,
I don't mean
when I
to
first
diminish.
No, well, it kind of is now. In hindsight, it's like, yeah, of course you could do that. But at the time, when I first had that realization of like, I want to be able to work from anywhere, do work that doesn't feel like work and makes a positive impact in the world. Like at that time, I was not doing any of that. I was in the corporate world. I was miles away from home. Felt very trapped. It felt a million miles away, So and then it happened. But then when I got asked that question the second time, I felt I wasn't happy that I didn't have the answer. It wasn't like, ooh, what's my mission? It was like, fuck, why have I not got a mission? Like I should have a mission. It's like, why haven't you got an answer to that question? And that really played on my mind for quite a few months actually. And then I read this book. I've still got this book here actually. I leave it in front of my desk because it always reminds me of that moment. I read this book called The Overstory. I don't know if you've seen that. It's a birthday present from some friends of mine.
Wow.
Really amazing book. It's fiction. It's a novel about trees, about deforestation and activists, and like the trees are talking to the people. The trees are like communicating with the people to help them to save the woodland. It's a beautiful book. It's an incredible book. And
Avatar was based on it.
yeah, kind of. And I read that. And in the same week where I read that, I talked to my friend who lives on the HS2 line, and she was really and she was an activist, and she was sort of protesting against the chopping down ancient woodland in Oxfordshire or wherever it is. And in my other home, which was Victoria in Australia, they were chopping down ancient woodland for a service road for a highway. And I saw that on social media. And so in the same week, I'm reading this book and it's really emotional. And then I'm seeing like, no, I've got two homes and this is happening now, Mm-hmm. And it really hit me. And I had this sort of epiphany moment where I was like, wow, I realized that, yeah, you can help people, but you can be very choiceful about who you help, and you can help people who are helping to change some of this systemic problems that are contributing to this. And it wasn't just about chopping down trees, it was more just the system that we're in. And that I literally stayed awake all night that night. I could not sleep because I was so buzzing. It was just like this download from somewhere. I was just like, you need to do this. It's like, fuck. And now, roll forward 18 months and I've got clients who are making huge impacts in the world in a really positive way, with way better ideas than I've got, and it's happening,
Do you have any advice for, I never asked this question, but advice for people that want to move into that space a bit more?
Which space?
Just sort of helping, because there are so many of us that just feel a bit, I guess, stagnant, stuck, to actually help aid the mission of sustainability, regeneration, like helping the wider, I guess, the planet. But just, I don't, we don't have to get into specifics, but people who just want to move into that direction, of working with more meaningful jobs, meaningful projects, I guess. Is it, what did you do? Is it a case of exploring what you're interested in online, going down rabbit holes and figuring out what companies you want to look to collaborate with or work with or help, you know.
Yeah, I do. I mean, that's one of the things that I help people with. You know, some of my clients are people who are transitioning, or they want to transition. They're trying to come out of a job or a career that they're not happy with, or they don't feel aligned with, and they want to live a more kind of meaningful life. So but, you know, I absolutely do help people with that. And a really good starting point, I think, is think about what problem do you care about? You know, what, because there's like, you just reeled off a bunch of stuff. I mean, where do you start? You know, there's so much going on in the world. There's many places to look. What do you care about? What are you passionate about? What do you worry about? What keeps you up at night? What frustrates you about what's going on in the world right now? What is that? And it might be a bunch of things, but get clear on that, or at least get yourself a short list, so that you have an area of focus, and then look to, well, who's already doing something in that space? Who do you look up to? What organizations, or, you know, whether it's charities or businesses or people that you know, even, like, who's already doing something in that space? And then how can you find a way to hang around them more? You know, how can you find a way to get in touch with them? I mean, that's one of the things that's amazing about social media. You can kind of find anyone now. You know, I mean, I love LinkedIn for that. LinkedIn's great because it's like you can tap out Richard Branson on LinkedIn if you wanted to. You know, it's like, not the same, but, you know, you can kind of find anyone. And if you've got some sense of what you're looking for or what you're interested in, you can find people who are doing it. And you can reach out to them, and you can just talk to them, you know, ask them what's going on. Just learn about that space to the point where you understand where you might be able to help. And for most people who've been around a little bit, you know, anyone who's been in any job for, I don't know, let's say 5 years plus, you've probably got some transferable skills and experience and knowledge that is relevant in a slightly different industry. You know, it's not always starting again from the bottom. You can kind of sidestep into things. And I think that's a really, really good way to go about it. It's start to just kind of build the network a bit and talk to people who are doing things that you think are good in the world. And all of a sudden, you know, opportunities open and doors open up, and you'll find a way in. Yeah,
absolutely. I think that's great dose of tangible kind of things and advice to hone in on. It's just to add to that, I think it's I mean, initially what you said about just what things do you care about, what problems have you faced, or even what problems have you overcome, like how can you help people do the same thing, I guess. Because that's definitely where a lot of you find people come into this space of helpers or healers or whatever you want to call it. It's people that have gone through something pretty challenging themselves to find some tools and techniques to actually navigate life that little bit better. Or you find a big gaping hole in what you're looking at, and then you see, oh, well, why is this there? How can I fill this hole with more joy and love and create something that's clearly missing, you know. But I would love to touch on the Menswork. I thought like this was always going to talk about, but it's really good to get more of an insight into you, I think, and the stuff that you care about and your journey. It's really insightful, to be honest, to get to know you more. The Menswork though, which is probably what we connected on initially, the Isle of Man. Like where did this feature into the journey? Talk about a gaping hole. I think this is one that I see. Just let's just talk directly to men, because we are men. The spaces that we haven't got in our culture to kind of connect together, and to share conversation that's vulnerable and intimate, and a feeling of security and safety around other men, that you're not judged, you're not laughed at, you're not, you're not challenged, you're not in competition. It's a rarity, and I know we both have kind of seen that.
It's an area of our culture, I think, that's really broken. And I think in the sort of the Western world anyway, the masculine culture is a bit of a mess. It's not really like, what is it to be a good man now? Mm-hmm. Do we even know that? It's not necessarily clear. And I think a lot of men are confused about how to be a good man. What is that? And it started for me, really, again, it was an accident. It was never an intention to go into that space. I had been pretty insecure in myself for most of my life, so never have, put myself out there as someone who could sort of lead or inspire or help other men, really, because I didn't feel like I had my own stuff together. But I went to a men's group and an event that one of my coaches organised. I signed up for some one-on-one coaching and to help me grow my business, really. And he said, I think you should come to this. A guy called Ankush Jain in the UK. And he said, I really want you to come to this. I think it'll really help you. And I was like, okay, I trust you. Just signing up with this guy. So I'd already sort of put some trust in him. And I said, yeah, right. And I went to it without really knowing what it was. And I went along, and it was, I think, 12 guys for 5 days. And I was quite intimidated going in because I didn't really know what to expect. And I didn't really know how to operate in that kind of environment. The rules were, you leave your ego at the door, no judgment. We're all just here to connect as equals. And there's no set agenda. Like, it's not like a training course or a workshop. It's like, no, we're just here, and you bring whatever you bring. You show up, and you put out into this what you want to put out into this. And that for me was like, whoa, okay. I've never been in that kind of environment before, and it was quite scary for the first couple of days. But it was amazingly powerful. And I came out of that feeling very different in myself. I'd slowed down a lot in my head. I was a way better listener. It's one of the things that happens in those kind of groups. You have to listen to other people. You have to drop your judgment and just listen, which sounds really obvious, but we're not very good at that. Generally in the sort of modern world, but definitely men are not very good at that.
Yeah, we listen with our mouths.
Yeah, exactly. We're listening, waiting to speak, or listening to agree or to disagree. We're not just listening, open, and we're very often listening from our head. We're not listening from our heart, or we're not just listening to connect. We're listening to try and fix or solve, or prove to everyone that we know something about this, or whatever. We've got so much on our minds. We're not actually listening. But I learned to listen, and I was like, whoa, okay, that in itself was a game changer. And it really helped me, and it helped me on multiple levels. It helped me at home, it helped me with my business, it helped me professionally, it helped me on a lot of levels. And I realized, one, there's a real need for this, and two, I realized I could do that too. It wasn't about, I love Ankush and he's awesome at what he does, but it wasn't about how amazing he was. It was like he was holding the space for everybody else. It was a collective, co-created thing. And I realized I could do that, and I could hold that space. And so I decided to do it. And then I sat on it for a whole year because I was too scared. And all the imposter syndrome stuff came up. I was like, I couldn't possibly do this. What are people going to think? And then I did one. Before I left Australia, I ran one. It was like I knew I was leaving, and I had my flight booked to leave, to come back, and I was like, I have to do this before I go. And it kind of forced me to do one. And I ran an event, for a few guys over a few days, and it was mind-blowing, like really, really impactful for everybody, including me. You know, it was just super, super powerful. And I just realized, holy shit, like this is really needed in the world. And the week after, I had my leaving party, and I had a bit of a party at my house, and a couple of the guys who'd been to the men's circle came to the party with their partners, one with his wife, one with his girlfriend. And both those women came up to me at some point in the party independently and said, can I have a quick word? And I said, yeah, right. And they said, thank you. Like, he's different now. Like, don't know what you guys did on that weekend, but it's really good. And I had tears in my eyes, you know. I was like, whoa. I realized the knock-on impact of that, and just the ripple effects that go out from doing that kind of work. And I was like, wow, right, okay, I really need to do more of this. You know, this is needed. So I have, and I've done a couple every year since. So yeah, I love it. You know, it's deep, it's profound work, it's very, very, very impactful, and I think it's really needed. And I think it links into so many other challenges that are going on in the world. You know, it feels like quite a high leverage thing to do, because whenever you help someone like that, or you help someone, it impacts their family, it impacts what they choose to do with their life, it impacts their career choices, it impacts so many other facets of life. And so that's why I'm still doing it. And it's not an easy thing. I'm going to put that right out there too. You know, it's not an easy thing, as I think you find too. Like, most men are terrified by that, something like that. It's not like there's loads of men going, yeah, show us where the men's groups are. You know, it's not. It's the opposite. You're going, hey, come to this thing, and they're like, guards up. You know, like, what? Why?
Yeah.
It's not. It's. I think we're still at a relatively early stage in that sort of movement, where it's sort of becoming more acceptable and okay for a guy to go, you know, buggering off for a few days to do some work on myself. Like that's not common. And but it's moving in the right direction.
Yeah, thanks for sharing all that, man. It's visceral, you know, and I hear you speak to the truth of that, and the impacts. It is something you said that really resonated was that we listen. It was about listening, and you said that we're in our head to then respond with something that we can add, or like that. I find myself doing this a lot, where especially on a podcast, because, you know, I've got to have some ammunition like lined up, and I'm really listening, and I'm trying being present, but then I have this kind of this mind thing where I'm like, right, what can I add to make me sound better? And there's an interesting balance there of just being present and just speaking from your heart, and if you haven't got anything to add, that's fine, we'll move on. It's like, but there's this need, and it's coming from a lack, it's coming from a place that isn't fully accepted. Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things is noticing where these energies are coming from within us, where our intention is, where our integrity is, and can we look at that? Can we accept that, bring it out, and just speak to it? And then when you speak to it, it makes it a bit more acceptable for other people too. And I'm sure you find like you being vulnerable in that space allows everyone else to be, and that can be like the difference, right?
Yeah. I mean, it has to, you have to, if you're going to facilitate something like that, you have to go there first. You have to show, you have to demonstrate. You can't just talk, you have to demonstrate it. So you have to slow down and be present, and just, you know, dial into your body, not just in your head, and be in that space and feel that connection. And once you do that and you kind of lead the way, everyone follows pretty quickly. And that's the beautiful thing about this, you know, at the start, and this has been the same every single one I've ever been to as an attendee and every single one that I've ever run. At the start, everyone's a bit nervous. You can just see people looking around like, what is this? Where's this going to go? You know, and it's kind of, everyone's a little bit uptight and awkward chat. And then, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours in, all of a sudden the whole energy is different. And all of a sudden people really start to slow down because they see and they feel that it's safe to do that. And when they do that, then all of a sudden that's when the good stuff comes out, because people then say things that they wouldn't normally feel comfortable to say because they feel safe to say it. And then it's like a tidal wave, because it's like very often, especially if someone's not been to something like that before, very often there are things that they've really wanted to say for a really long time and they've just not, because they've not felt comfortable or they've not had anyone that they felt safe to talk to about it or whatever. And then all this stuff comes out, and it comes out and it's safe to come out because no one's judging, and it's like, cool, yeah, everyone acknowledges it and we all realize we're very similar, and it sort of gets its own momentum at that point. But you have to go first to really show it.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the biggest thing in transformation that you see at these events? What's like the biggest, whether it's exercise or practice or something that the experience of something, or like a moment? What's like the biggest point of transformation, would you say?
The thing that I'm always aiming for, the thing that's the most important thing for me, if I have any intention doing this kind of thing, is this. It's when someone sees through their own thought generated experience, and they recognize that that's just happened. That is a transformation moment. Where someone catches themselves, you know, they're stressed about whatever, and it doesn't matter what the context is. They might be talking about their relationship, their financial situation, their business, their career, their kids, their health, whatever someone's talking about. There's a specific context, but they are creating that as a problem. They are conceptualizing that in a way that has them not at peace. And when someone sees that and they feel that, and it stops being a problem in that moment, and the feeling changes without actually solving the problem. Usually it's just they see it differently. You know, they suddenly get a different perspective on it, and they're like, oh, and they feel it and they relax, and then all of a sudden they have way more perspective, and they usually from that point they really quickly find the answers to whatever that was they were battling with. But when they see that that's happened, it's like you get it's a vertical shift in understanding. It's not about problem solving. It's a shift in understanding about how you make problems in the first place. If that makes sense. And it's like, that's profound, because once you've had an experience like that, you can't unhave it. You know, once you've seen it, it's there, and you understand yourself more deeply. You understand your own thought, feeling, mind, body connection more deeply, and that applies to any problem. You know, that is relevant to every context in your life, and that's the thing that really, for me, that's what it's about. You know, it's about helping people to get that, because that's transferable. That's not just about having a nice conversation with a few guys for a few days and we have a lovely time and then we go back to life and it's exactly the same. That makes no sense. There's no change there. That's just a nice weekend. It's like, what can you learn? It's like that shift in understanding then leads to a different experience of life afterwards, in any context. And that's the thing, you know. That's what it's all about. It's like the whole thing is designed to have those moments happen for everybody. And the beautiful thing about that in a group environment is when one person has a moment like that and everyone sees it, it's so obvious, and then it's like, oh, and then it's almost like domino effect, you know. Everyone starts to get it. There was a moment in the last one that I did. there was just such a beautiful example of this, where this guy was talking about he was talking about this like uncontrollable rage that he would have. And he'd had it since he was a kid, and he'd had like quite a traumatic upbringing, and you know, he's in his 40s now, and he was talking about how like this feeling would come up, and it was just taking over him, and he was feeling that feeling when he was talking about it, and he was like, I'm not at peace, and I'm not comfortable. He was agitated, and he was talking fast, and you know, it was like, and as we were exploring this, at some point it just stopped. He just saw it differently, and he just got it, and it just went boom, like in an instant, and he was like, and he just visibly calmed down. He was just like, just visibly calmed down. He was like, fuck. And I was like, what happened to that feeling then? And he said, well, it's just gone. I was like, so what happened? And the only thing that happened was he realized what was happening and saw it differently. And it was almost like, it was so quick that you could have missed it, you know? And I was like, stop, you know, did everybody just see that? Because that's what it looks like when you have a profound shift that just completely changes how you see things. And people were like jaw drop, you know, because it was so obvious in someone else. And then that gave everybody else more access to that too.
Yeah.
You know? And that for me is what these kind of group things are about. I mean, that's kind of in the one-on-one work too, but like group environments are so powerful for that kind of thing.
Yeah, and there might have even been an element of he actually felt heard for the first time.
Yeah, he definitely was.
You know, expressing something, and then you're like, oh, there's so much energy wrapped around this thing. Now I'm actually have got the floor to express this and let it be heard. It's like, oh, it's not that.
Yeah,
it's not that crazy. Yeah, I mean, there's a similar experience I can speak to. It was very, very recent in my partnership. So Nina was mirroring to me. Well, she was asking for a need, really.
right.
She was saying, you know, you didn't communicate something. So she asked for more transparency there around communication. And that communication might be, I'm not ready to talk about this right now, but it needs to be spoke to. But without going into it too deeply, I recognize myself going to but don't I always communicate? I do that all the time. Like, okay, this one time that I didn't say thing, or I didn't reply. Like, I always reply. It's like, no. And then there was this moment where I was just like, and I'd probably use that, call it an excuse, several, hundreds of thousands of times. It's a pattern in my childhood to get me out of things, and not be responsible to take action on your responsibility. And I was like, oh, I felt myself like shift. I was like, I'm witnessing that the reason why I've said that. And although it might be true, that's not honoring the other person. And you're just washing away what they're saying by coming up with, well, I normally do that, so let's focus on the things I do. And it's like, nah. So yeah, that was a visceral moment for me. But it's you're catching yourself in these moments, because we are full of habits and familiarity, and everything's just trying to keep us safe away from conflict. And that might be in an argument or whatever it is, but you'll definitely have these mechanisms that you've built up.
Yeah, I think what you said is it. Like, it's probably that pattern of thinking or relating probably goes back a very long way to when you were really young, and that's how you made sense of the world back then, and it made sense back then to a kid. But then so that pattern then sticks, and then like, that's how I always do it, all unconscious. But then you get to some point in your life and those patterns don't serve you anymore. And it is being able to see them and bring them into your consciousness, so you can actually see them playing out and go, oh wow, okay, is that actually a good thing for me to keep? Do I want to keep this pattern of behavior, thinking? And if you do, great, keep it. But if you don't, then you have agency at that point to change it. But you have to be able to see it first, And it's such a powerful thing when you see it like that, when you see it in the moment and you feel it and you're like, whoa, I'm showing up like a 5-year-old here, and that's not cool anymore. And you can change it in that moment, and that's a beautiful thing. That's like how change happens, isn't it?
You can.
Amazing.
And it sticks, and you always remember that time where you realized. I think that conversation happened so many times though, and I've not recognized it. Like, it's really on us as partners to honor the other person's process, or even as men, honoring. That's why these groups are incredibly powerful, because we're not trying to fix the other person. We're just trying to hold a mirror up, and we're not trying to give our opinions about what they should be doing, because people need to see it for themselves. And it's the biggest when you're in a partnership, because that might happen over and over again for years. So you really have to trust that you're both on the same wavelength for things, and you're really trying to do your best to grow from situations. Because if you're not growing, then there's no really staying still. You're either improving or you're not. And you're just gonna keep letting those situations just, I guess, get the better of you, really, more than anything. How many events are you doing a year now? And is this the Isle of Man's your project, or do you do that with one other person?
Yeah, it's a collaboration now. I was doing them on my own the first few times that I did it, which was great. But one of the things that I'm really passionate about is food as well. Having spent a long time in the food industry and seen some really bad stuff, I've got some pretty strict rules and values around food.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I started to run events, I was like, I don't want to sacrifice my values just because I'm running events. So, got high standards with what foods we use, and like, don't use any plastic and stuff like that. I stopped shopping in the supermarkets years ago.
To speak to that, how many years ago have you not been in a supermarket?
I don't know. I've probably been in the supermarket every now and again in an emergency, but
so you do go in.
Cleaning product. I don't think I've been in since I've been back in the UK for anything significant. No, I don't do my weekly shop. I mean, I'm lucky. I've got access. I live in the country, so I've got access to some amazing stuff, and I buy directly from all the growers from all the farms. But no, I mean, I stopped doing my weekly shop in the supermarket, I don't know, more than 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a long time. When I was still in London, I'd stopped using the supermarket by then.
Yeah, it's radical for some people to even get their head around how much time that must take, and energy, and kids, and all sorts. And of course, there's so many factors and layers to this for people, but the only person stopping you is yourself. They said you're lucky to get access. You've got access. Everyone has access. It's just being creative and spending the time, an hour a week, and then just that compounds over time, just on like trying to get these avenues explored. And how can I look to implement different ways of getting produce and getting food.
It's easy. You've got to get it from somewhere. So why not just go to the market? That's the way I'd always done it. I lived in Brixton for quite a few years, and Brixton Market's really cool. So I used to go down to Brixton Market and get it all there. There's a few nice little independent delis and stuff around there when I was there. So it'd still take you just as long as it would go around the supermarket, and it was a much nicer experience. You actually got to talk to the people who were selling the food. It was a hustle and bustle in the market. I loved it. I loved it. It was my first thing when I first got to Melbourne. I didn't know anyone. First night in Melbourne, and I'm there on the internet going, "Where's the market? Where's the local market?" I went down to South Melbourne Market on my first day, and just hung around there for a couple of hours, chatting to people and checking out the food. And I don't know. I really don't think it's a big deal. I've not used a supermarket when I lived in big cities, and I don't use a supermarket now. I live in the countryside, and it's like, it's totally possible, and it's so much easier now with all the delivery services. You know, you can get an organic vegetable box delivered. I used to get Abel and Cole, you know, veggie box delivered when I was in London. No, it's years ago. It's like more than 10 years ago I started doing that. You can now get organic meat delivered to your door. You can even get fish delivered to your door. But I did that once, and the amount of packaging was absolutely horrific. So I stopped doing that straight away. But I don't think it's that hard, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll do it like, I'll go to, so I live relatively near the south coast, and my sister lives down there. So when I go down there, I'll go down to like one of the little local fishmongers where they're just doing all local Poole Harbour fish. It's all local fish. And I'll just go down there with a big box, and I'll spend like £100 and I'll just fill it. But then I'll just freeze it all. And then, you know, it's food.
Use the pun.
Yeah. It's food for weeks.
You said you'd fill it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I get
no.
them to do that. Fill it in fish, not my forte.
Yeah, so I just got a meat order, and now you're bringing my awareness to the packaging that's also arrived with it. But yeah, Wild Meat Company, I just spent close to £100 on getting the next 3 months of meat, and maybe more, you know, and doing it in one order. And there's no reason for me to shop in the supermarket with meat and stuff, which I don't know where it's coming from. And it's not
you know where it's coming from. It's coming from a battery farm somewhere. Let's be real, let's be frank about it. It's coming from a battery farm.
Yeah.
And it's being fed on soy and grains and all kinds of horrible stuff, which itself is being fed with bunch of synthetic fertilizers and covered in pesticides and stuff. Like, it's toxic, man. It's really toxic. Mm-hmm. I risk of me getting on a soapbox here because I've got very strong views about this. But
do it, man. I mean I'm on your wavelength.
The supermarket is not a food shop. It is a plastic poison shop.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. It sells plastic and it sells food that is not actually food. Most of it. It really is. Like, no wonder we're a nation full of, you know, increasingly obese, sick people with chronic health conditions. Like, because the food industry is absolutely at the heart of that. It really is. It's absolutely at the heart of the plastic problem. It's absolutely at the heart of the destruction of the seas. You know, with all the acid, all the microplastics going into the food chain now in the sea. It's absolutely at the heart of the deforestation problem. That's all for food. You know, most of it's for soy or whatever to be fed to animals for cheap meat. You know, and it's absolutely at the heart of so much of the major chronic health problems. You know, so let's be honest about it. Mm-hmm. Those companies are not doing good in the world. They're really not. And I can say that because I've been inside those companies. I worked inside those companies. I was a supplier to those companies for a long time. So I've seen it, and it's uncomfortable. And I was too, you know, I was very uncomfortable about sharing my views on that for a long time. I wouldn't post about it on social media or whatever. I still got loads of friends and ex-colleagues and stuff who are in the food companies and you know, in that industry. And I felt very uncomfortable being vocal about my opinions about that. But, you know, at some point you've got to start being honest, and you've got to be honest with yourself, and you've got to be honest with what's going on. And if you're interested in change starts here, you know, and you've got to change what you're doing. And that was one of the moments that really helped. That was a real pivotal moment for me, coming out of that industry, because I was doing a lot of the speaking, and I used to do this like thought leadership presentation, like state of the industry kind of presentation. You know, what are the big trends going on in this industry? And we put it together, and then I'd go around and I'd present it to a bunch of companies at like sales conferences and stuff. And I hadn't been in the supermarket for years at that point, and as my shop. But you know, if you're an expert in the supermarket industry, you kind of need to go into a supermarket to have a look at what's going on. And I just remember being stood in front of 50 odd people in this room that were like their sales day, with me as like the external expert talking about the shopper, about the supermarket industry and just feeling like such a hypocrite.
Mm-hmm.
It really hit me in that moment. I'm like, I am living a false life here, because in my private life, I'd happily talk to you about this over the dinner table, or, you know, and you look in my fridge and you'd see me on the weekend going down to the market and all of that. But I'm being paid to help these companies make more money. It was like, oh, it was a very uncomfortable moment for me. It was a real, like, you know, wake up moment of like, what are you doing? Like, you can't do this. You can't do this. And pretty uncomfortable. But I think it's actually really easy to change, especially now. It's really not that hard to change, and it makes such a huge difference, and it's so much more enjoyable. The food's just so much better. I mean, if nothing else, you're just putting better food into you. Like, that in itself is a reason.
Like, when did that start becoming kind of uncool, or like not necessarily uncool, but when did that start becoming abnormal? You know, like, because you bring it up in certain circles, maybe it's family, you bring up the fact that we're all, you know, very marketed with toxic food and just sugar and all the rest of it. I mean, pick your poison, but we're marketed to it. And when did that, speaking to that, start becoming the kind of the thing people laugh at? You know, the abnormal kind of.
Yeah. I get the eye roll all the time. Oh God, here he goes again, you know.
So what do you think it is then, speaking directly to that within people that don't want to look at it or think you're just being too, you know, because you would have got it, the eye roll, whatever it is, the contempt, or what is it within people that you feel that they just don't want to see it within themselves, or they feel it's like another thing to do, or the effort?
I don't know. I think it's probably a combination of all of it, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I think people very often have an assumption that changing some quite fundamental aspects of their life is going to be hard. They just assume change is hard, you know. So therefore, I'm not even going to think about it. I think some people just don't give a shit, to be honest, and that's fair enough. Like, they just don't have, you know, their values are not in that way, that it's just not a priority for them. Some people, you know, go, well, it's all about price, it's all about price, you know, and they've been trained to think by the supermarkets that food should be cheap, and that cheap is good when it comes to food, when actually cheap means poisons, battery farming, plastic, you know, synthetics, all that stuff. That's what cheap means. But there's this idea that, like, it's all about price, without actually having a look at what it costs to go down the local market and talk to the greengrocer. Like, you know, it actually doesn't need to cost more or much more.
What about water? Have you gone down the rabbit hole of filtration and filtering your water?
I was a big skeptic about that, but my sister has been educating me.
I've been spending days just looking into it.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what. I'll show you something. It's a little bit gross, but I'll show you it.
What distilled some water?
So she's actually got a distiller now, and actually, if you look in that distiller, it's horrendous. But I've got there's a radiator here, and you know, in the winter when the radiator's on, it gets really dry, and then sinuses get all kind of blocked up. So I just put a little bowl with some water, and I'll just do that every morning, and then it just stops the atmosphere getting too dry. We just tap water. Right. Look at that bowl.
So that's from what? Sorry.
That's the tap water. That was just been a little bowl of tap water.
Yeah.
Been put on the radiator to evaporate, just to keep the atmosphere not too dry. Yeah. That's what's left in there.
When did you put that there? Last, like, 10 years ago?
No, well, I don't know. That's probably a couple of months. I haven't had the radiator on for a month, but
wow. So yeah, you're distilling water there, and what's left is all the fucking chemicals.
I don't know what it is, but it's not very nice.
Chlorine.
I should move it, really. Yeah. I mean, that stuff's going in.
So you're drinking tap water at the moment?
I've got these. I might have some here actually. I've got these little. You can buy these little charcoal things. It's just a piece of charcoal, and so it's tap water, but then you put them in it and you leave it overnight, and then the charcoal kind of absorbs the whatever. Apparently. So,
yeah, I think that puts minerals back into the water. Doesn't necessarily take anything out. But yeah, okay, this is a rabbit hole you're going to go down for sure, because it's as big as the whole food thing.
Yeah.
If not more. It's crazy how much information there is about certain ways of filtration and like all the different ways in which you can filtrate the water and what's best. But yeah, I've been kind of going down this rabbit hole for the last couple of weeks, to really try and get an understanding of like what is the best practice for taking care of your water.
Yeah.
But yeah, we should chat about it.
Yeah.
But cool,
I think
man.
with the food thing, like, from the perspective of change, I do think that is one of the highest impact things that you can do to be more sustainable and to be more healthy. It's like really look at what food is coming into your house. It's the thing that we spend most often. It's like if you're not buying loads of stuff, which if you're not into sort of too many material possessions, I mean, what are people spending money on every week? It's food, isn't it? It's food and drink. Yeah. And it's like when you really look at that and you make some conscious choices about that, you can really change your impact really, really quite quickly. And it's I think it's a high leverage thing to do. I'm a big advocate of banning supermarkets, but it's not a popular view.
Yeah, no, that's not going to work, is it? And we also, some people I speak to have this kind of idea that like there's a lack around food, which is a whole mindset over what's actually possible, and that you can't feed people majority of fruit and vegetables, which makes zero sense, when most of the fruit and veggies go into animal feed anyway, to feed the animals that you think that we can't survive without. But yeah, big one for sure. But we are the biggest outgoing we have is food. So I think that should be kind of the standard, really, or somewhere to look. If it's not, then why not?
Yeah. And just on the health thing, like probably my most recent exploration with health is fasting, and like longer form fasting. And I've been really playing around with that the last probably 2-3 months now. I mean, I've been intermittent fasting for a few years, but like several days of not eating, and that's been a revelation to me too. It's like we're eating way too much. We don't need to eat anywhere near the amount of food that we're eating. That's been huge, and it's really helping me with some health stuff too. So I think our whole relationship with food is quite confused, and I think quite not where it needs to be actually.
Yeah, it's important, man. It should find its way into every podcast. Right, man. Let's leave it there. So, where can people find you, and where are you are you active online? And if anyone wants to find out about the Menswork, where do they go?
Yeah, we didn't even talk about that too much, do we? I'm pretty active online. My website is just my name, so it's nathaniel.dunn.co.uk. And then I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, and I'm pretty active on Facebook as well. Again, if you just look up my name, you'll find me.
Nice, good stuff, man. What are you most excited about right now?
That's a good question.
What you've got going on that you are?
Yeah, I've got. I turned 40 a couple of months ago, so I've got a big 40th birthday party coming up soon, which I'm really looking forward to. I haven't hosted a big party in this country for 10 years, and I used to organise a few parties, so I'm really looking forward to that. I'm speaking at a music festival this year for the first time. I'm really pumped about that. Yeah, in like, I don't know, a couple of months, 6 weeks, something like that.
What's the music festival?
Noisily Festival.
Yeah, I know it.
Yeah, I've not been before, but yeah, big part of my life, and sort of bringing together that, you know, going to festivals, but actually contributing in a meaningful way. And
Nice.
yeah, really excited about that.
That's cool, man. Great. All right, man. Let's leave it there. Appreciate you coming on and speaking to everything you have spoken to. I think
thanks for having me.
Very important stuff, man. And it's good to connect again and find out some more things that you're going on with you, man. It's good.
Definitely. Thanks for having me, mate. Really, really good conversation.
Yeah, awesome, man.